going out from Alan, is it? Yes, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to be seated? The meeting is about to start. Thank you.
All the late coffee drinkers, could you come and sit down? Not a chance. Anyway, welcome to everybody. I'm afraid the technology has failed us, and our sound system is inoperative. Not all of us have the vocal projection of Rodney, unfortunately. So you'll have to put up with people like me who speak quietly, and you'll have to listen more carefully than normal. Anyway, welcome to everybody, and we will kick off with our President, David, whom you all know very well. And we've forgotten between us the names of all the various eminent gentlemen sitting on the top table with me. So before David stands up, I just thought I'd introduce everybody to those who don't know. At the far end there is Len Coxolino. We're not quite sure what he does, but he does everything. So you all know Len. James joined the board last year and is understudying Arnold on the club's records and archives and all that sort of thing, which he's taken to with a great will. And he's a very valuable addition to our board. You've then got Roger Seabrook here, and Roger has been editing the mag for how many?
9 years.
9 years now, and counting. Key, the magazine is what glues the whole club together, so it's a key part of the board. Brian is my right hand here. Brian does the numbers, and although he's called the treasurer, he's really the finance director. I think it was a more appropriate designation for you, Brian. What do you think?
I'm quite happy with treasurer.
Treasurer sounds as if he's got lots of money in his pockets, which he has.
I'll talk about that later.
Anyway, David, you must all know, and Colin, of course, has been around for 200 years. And counting. And we don't need to say what Colin does, because I think everyone knows Colin. Now we have a new face here who will only be here if you vote for her later in the meeting. This is Catherine Mollington, who's been co-opted onto the board in the last 12 months, and you have to vote her in a bit later, and she'll say a few words to you in due course.
She has a name.
Peter Gilks next door there looks after our post-war cars, if that's the right way of putting it. He's been doing that for how long now, Peter?
Since Jonathan Oppenheimer's time.
Too long, anyway. Beyond that, we can't introduce Rodney again, I don't think. And Tim on the end there, who crept in, I had him down as an apology, and he suddenly turned. Tim looks after the competition side of the club. So that's the lineup, and I'll now hand over to David to kick the meeting off.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to our annual general meeting. Unfortunately, we start with some sad news. The death of our past chairman, Clive Dalton.
Oh no. Oh no.
Asking those of you who are able to just stand for a moment's reflection. Thank you. Clive joined the club in 1959. I think he was aged 23. He was restoring a Continental 2-litre, which became his trademark steed for the right up to the present day. His and Shirley's last hurrah was at our Snowdonia rally in 2019, and they were both in excellent spirits. Clive was a highly intelligent person, but also a lovely, thoughtful man who saw the best in everybody. He became our chairman in 1998 and served in 2004. So we'll all miss him. The continued success of our club relies on its standing firmly on several pillars. Do you want to sit down? It's going to be quite a long time. The continued success of our club relies on its standing on several pillars. The one pillar, as just been mentioned, is our archives, administration and record keeping, which is so vital that we all know the history of our cars and who's owned them and of course who owns them now. A lot of this information is now available digitally, but it remains accumulation of a huge amount of voluntary work achieved over many, many years. Another pillar of our club is the social side: competition, racing, hill climbs, trials, and of course our pub meets and days out and rallies long and short. These are reported in our excellent newsletter and magazine. Our recent magazine produced by Roger, I hope you've all seen the centre page. It brought many admiring comments when Alan and I were on the Continental Rally from our Continental partners just a couple of weeks ago. Particularly Alan Harrison's photograph of the huge lineup of Lagondas underneath that Spanish castle. That's the envy of many a club. There are not many clubs can do that now. Nearly all of them have got full of modern cars. Another vital pillar of our club excuse me, is our spares section. Our spares section, coupled with our website and club shop, which provides parts, regalia, workshop handbooks, publications, old and new. And I would suggest, if any of you are thinking of giving your Lagonda to a specialist, in inverted commas, to work on it, that you make sure the specialist has one of our handbooks. One or two chaps have had disastrous engine failures because the specialist has fallen into the pitfalls that we all fell into over the last 80 years. Another major pillar of our club is our spares section, because we have this huge range of cars and we provide most of our spares from the club. And when I joined the club 60 years ago, the supply of spare parts was provided by one Captain Ivan Ford. Some of us remember this character. He was a character, writing long letters of advice, supplying vital spares. The one thing you didn't do when you rang Captain Ivan Forshaw up is ask him how he was. He would start by saying, "You do realise, young man, that I served king and country and sustained severe injury, from which and then it went on. And all you wanted was a kingpin. But he provided all these parts by breaking up huge numbers of cars. Anything he could get his hands on, he just dismantled them, and he sort of had a very high quality Lagonda breakers yarn. Since then, of course, our vital spares section has passed through many incarnations to the present day, where we have over 1,000 new parts on the website in stock, and this is now being coupled with an excellent range of second-hand parts, which we're gathering in as these become available, and cataloguing them, which is going to be extremely useful. As I was driving down yesterday, I reflected on the club parts that were whirring around, the valves clicking away millions of times, club valves clicking away millions of times as I was driving down, the water pump from the club spares sloshing the water around, the gears whirring in the gearbox, all new club gears, because most Lagonda double helical gears are well past their sell-by date now. And of course the back axle, crown wheel and pinion thrusting me along onwards. These parts are absolutely critical to, and over the last 10 years, our chairman John Sword has worked very hard running our club and devoting a lot of his time to ensuring the continuity of our spares availability, without which our Lagondas would eventually become unreliable or even immobile. And the agency arrangement that he set up with David Eyre has been of considerable benefit, and the hoovering up of the LMB spares a couple of years ago, when they ceased to operate, was also vital, even though it possibly gave our Hon treasurer the odd sleepless night. But John's firm hand on the tiller of our Lagonda ship over the last 10 years has kept us steady during the last turbulent decade, and we should all be very grateful for his expertise and industry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Now, I'm noted for my timing. We've got 45 minutes to go, so...
I'm not going to fill that.
Anyway, welcome everybody. This is our 36th AGM since we became a company rather than a private club. And a particular welcome to those who've come a long way. With COVID, we've had fewer visitors from the continental part of Europe. And I don't know, apart from Lawrence, where are you? Apart from the Hannams, I don't think we have any non-Brits here. I include the Scot.
Brew Jones, J28, Australia.
Oh, well, we can't beat that anyway. I've had apologies from Peter Weir, because he's normally the Scots representative, and he's gone in for a cataract operation, so he can't be. It's the first AGM he's missed for a decade, I think. Anyway, so we haven't. Are there any other Scots here? No. Ireland. Peter, of course. Where's the? He's hiding in the background. And of course, Bill's from Orkney.
Yeah.
Is Orkney part of Scotland?
Dangerous ground, John.
The Spencers have cheated because they're not here in Bill's wonderful 3 litre. So, anyway, welcome. I have apologies from many people, but I should particularly mention Peter, who I've just mentioned, and I should also mention Warren King, whom all of you will know. Warren is very unwell, and he had been planning to come, being driven by David Wall in his newly restored LG45, but he's now so ill he couldn't even get into the car. So I said that we would miss him enormously. He's normally sitting in the front row, asking awkward questions to Brian. Yes. And when I told Brian he wasn't coming, he said, "Thank goodness for that." Anyway, I'd like to say to Warren that we're all sending him his best wishes. The other person who should be up here with us on this table is Nigel Smeal, who's one of our directors, and he is very ill in hospital. And I just wanted to remember his situation to you all. We've had a lot of other people who've kindly written in, but I won't go through a long list, but they're the ones you will know. If I can start by thanking Rodney for his organisation. Rodney's had a hell of a year because he had to organise our Spanish rally, which he did with Jonathan. Where's Jonathan hiding?
Yeah.
And that was a huge success. And then he's gone on to do Is this your third AGM, Rodney?
Yeah, the second,
Only
Chairman.
the second.
Only my second.
You've got
Yes.
a long way to go. Anyway, a thousand thanks to Rodney. I think the arrangements this year have been a big improvement on last year, which is very much COVID affected. There were shortages, short stoppages, as Terry Wogan used to call them, afflicted last year. But this year, I think I've certainly found it a very good experience. And Rodney will be asking you about it later on. Anyway, can we give a round of applause for Rodney? I'd also like to thank Peter, who organised the scenic tour yesterday. I think in the end not many people went on it, but those who did thought it was a super outing. And Peter put a lot of work into doing the maps and everything, and it was a very nice route around the Cotswolds. So Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last but not least is Len down there. Len does a phenomenal amount of work for the club, too long to list. He looks after, the main job he has is looking after the website, which has been totally reorganised in the last, 18 months, Len? When did we put the clock on that?
2.5 years, I think.
It seems forever. Anyway, so Len's in charge with all that side of things. He's also understudying Arnold. We've got James understudying Arnold on the archives, and Len's understudying on the registry, if I can put it that way. They're keeping track of all the cars and the membership on the computer system. And of course, he also organised today the concourse and the layout on the field. Len got up at, 6 a.m. this morning?
Yep.
Or before?
No, well, I got a bit before that. I left at 6. It was a bit cold.
He arrived here where I must admit I was still asleep, to laying the field out for our thing today. So huge thanks to Len. So, going down this is the annual general meeting of the Lagonda Club Limited, so this is a legal meeting and we have to cover certain legal things. So I'm not making any lengthy speeches or anything, but that's introduced everybody. And we now need to move on to the approval of the accounts for the year. This is the year ending March 22, and who has not read in detail the accounts? Now, I want hands up. Who has not read all the numbers? What an amazing membership we've got. Are you believable?
I'm prepared to accept it at face value, John.
Anyway, Brian, who I must call my CFO rather than our treasurer, puts an immense amount of work into it. We have the best set of documentation, accounting and reporting that I know in any small organisation like that I've ever worked with. And he spends hidden time sitting at home, which Hilary, I think, would say something about.
I'm actually quite grateful for it, actually.
Anyway, and he produces every quarter superb numbers. He looks at the bank account every day. He worries about the cash coming in, the cash going out. And he's an absolutely rock that the club rests on. So you can now ask him any questions you like in Warren's absence, and anything in the numbers. And if you haven't got any questions, you're going to say a few words. Anyway.
Just a couple, yeah. Seriously, if anybody has any questions, please do ask. I don't intend to go through the accounts in any detail. I would just note that we did make a surplus last year. It was about £11,000. As we came out of COVID, we saw a pickup in the sales of spare parts, which helped to contribute to that. On the other side of the balance sheet, or the trading account, I should say, we did see the start of what is now we all know as a cost of living crisis, God help us. That started to impact on our costs in last year and has continued into this year. I'd also say that so far this year, since from the 1st of April till yesterday, we are running quite a lot. We have lost a few members, but much more worryingly, we've seen a big fall in the sale of spare parts. You might remember that last year we repaid a government loan that we took out originally as members' loans, I transferred that to a government loan to save the interest on that. We repaid that in November last year. On the strength that the sales of spare parts were picking up, we also invested in replenishing some of the stock of spare parts that we had let run down a bit during that period. All I will say to you, gentlemen, and ladies, if you're thinking of buying a spare part for your car, or even if you're not, please do. Get it on the shelf.
It'll be more expensive in 6 months' time.
I'm afraid we are seeing an increase in cost. We've got a wonderful team of people at Johnson's Farm. They work really, really hard, but they are not volunteers. They are paid people. They have to be paid a proper living wage. So that is going up. We're looking at ways in which we can save money in other areas. We've got a few, but we are limited. There's not a lot that we can do on that. So please, if you're thinking about it, get your order in now, get the spares on the shelf, and get the money into my bank account. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say, unless anybody has any questions on the numbers or on anything else. Collins.
I'd just like to add a comment as member of the spares team that I have encountered various rather grumpy comments from people not necessarily here about the 40% markup that we put on spares. And just to make it absolutely clear, as Brian has said, Robin and Leah and Francis have to be paid, and that we run a very efficient operation, and we're not, as a not-for-profit organisation, if anybody has any complaints about the markup on the spares, then come and join the spares committee and help us find cheaper sources of where the stuff's made from.
Yeah. We are seeing, I mean, the headline inflation rate today is something 9%, I think, expected to go up to about 11. On our latest reordering of spare parts, we're seeing increases of 20, 25, 30% in the underlying prices. We have no option but to pass that on. So again, you know, if you're going to buy something, buy it now, get it on the shelf. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Brian, something that I noted from the past is the ability of Royal Mail to increase their postage rates,
Yes.
parcel rates. I wondered how we were in the situation with the latest increases that
Well, in relation to the newsletter, that was covered. We fortunately, our publisher keeps us up to date on what's happening with the Royal Mail. So when we set the rates for this year, it's more or less covered. We're more or less in balance. On the distribution of spare parts, where we use the Royal Mail, actually we find them reasonably competitive. But we do keep it under review. In fact, we did a major review just last quarter, in fact, and looked at all of the... It varies. It's like everything else, like every other organisation. You can't charge the exact amount of postage or carriage for each individual parcel, so we set it in bands, and we review that fairly regularly, make sure that we are at least covering our cost, and ideally just making a little margin, 4 or 5% on that if we can.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, sorry, I'm guilty of John's suggestion of not reading the accounts in great detail, but I just wondered if you could comment, so year to date, are we running a net deficit, or are you just warning us that it's...
As of today, we are, yes, we're seeing a cash outflow, which is very, I mean, again, let me try and explain. Traditionally, the club all the subscriptions were renewed on the 1st of April. That's with the new website, that's changed. So we're now renewing subscriptions as they fall due, but still the vast majority fall on the 1st of April. So our subscription income falls into that period, March, April, May. And in the nearly 10 years that I've been doing this job, we've always had a cash surplus in the first half of the year, which we then use in the second half of the year until we start to get them in again. This is the first year, in my experience, that we've actually had a cash deficit. So the bank balance this morning, I think, was about £20,000. At the end of last year, it was about 32,000, something like that. So, yeah, I don't want to be alarmist, but I do want you to start buying some spare parts.
You're not desperately concerned at this stage?
Yeah, as a general comment, the club is run, and always has been, nothing to do with me. I mean, Colin used to be the treasurer going back, and I took over from him, 14 years ago, something like that, and we've continued to run in a very conservative way financially. And the club is basically, Brian lies awake worrying about it, which is his job. But basically we're okay. And if we have to put prices up, we put prices up. That's the bottom line, and the members have to pay for the cost of the club one way or another. We don't overdo that. We try and make a small surplus each year, which can go funding new spare parts and things, but it is, what was it, 11 grand last year, the surplus, something like that. And that just keeps the thing topping up. And we will make sure that continues. So you don't need to worry. Some clubs have got into serious trouble, no names, no pack drill. We're not amongst them. Say no more.
I mean, just a final word on that is that one of the things we've had to do is to slow down the ordering of replacement spare parts or new spare parts, because I am not prepared to let the club finances get into a situation where we can't cover our current liabilities. So we just have to order things as and when we can afford them.
No, thank you.
No, we have about getting on for £500,000 of spare parts in stock, which is pretty unusual for this sort of organisation, and we do cover virtually everything that people can need, and if we have to slow down on that for a bit, well, we slow down that for a bit, and so the tap is adjustable.
Thanks, that's very comprehensive.
Okay.
Yep. Anything else?
Anything else for the numbers? No. Thank you very much.
Can I ask for the?
Can we have a vote on approving the accounts then, please? Those in favour? Those against? I dare you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, linked to that, we need to reappoint Manny Chaco and Co., which is actually Manny on his own, as our reporting accountants. Being a small organisation, we don't have to have a formal audit of our accounts. I think hopefully people are aware of that, which will cost more, but we do have Manny commenting, I suppose, on the...
Manny reviews all the numbers that I produce. We don't always agree, but we usually do. And it's very important that we do continue to do that, even though it's not a legal requirement.
So Brian does a lot of the detailed accounting, which used to be done outside, but Manny checks them every quarter. We're now, I think, dropping that to every half year.
I think so, yes. It's one of the things we can save.
To save a bit of money on. He's a lovely man, lives in Croydon, and you don't see him very often, do we?
We speak on the... Well, we actually communicate mostly by emails, but we do speak on the phone occasionally. Croydon's a long way from my house. I'm in Cheshire.
Anyway, he's a lovely man, and I would recommend that we reappoint him as our reporting accountant. Can I have a approval for that? Those in favour? Thank you very much. Those against? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nem con. Now, much more importantly, we now move along to the election and re-election of board members. We have a board who's nearly all sitting up here in front of you. I think Arnold, sadly, is again unable to be with us, but I think everybody else is here, apart from Nigel, who is unwell, as I referred to earlier. And the way it works is that your board individual members serve for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years they come up automatically for re-election. So you can chuck us out at that point if you don't like. So you're not stuck with all the lovely faces along here unless you vote for it. Coming up this year, who are retiring under the 3-year rule, are Roger. Roger, you just wave to people. Just do like Roger. Len. Brian.
It's the end of the table, isn't it?
And Peter. Am I allowed to propose a bulk?
No.
I'm not. We used to do that. I get ticked off for doing it. Right.
Because you can't unvote somebody, you can do it on both.
You're right. So individually, can I have the votes for Roger? To reappoint Roger for 3 years. Those in favour? Any against? Anyone against has to take over the editing of the mag. Roger, you're stuffed, I'm afraid.
Thank you, everyone.
Moving on, Len. I dare you to vote against Len. Those in favour, I've got another 3 years for Len. Those against? Come on. No, Len, you've had it. Brian, now's your chance. Those in favour? And those against?
You have to take over.
Most of you didn't see, but Brian's wife Hillary was waving. We had both hands up. Right, and Peter, who hasn't got any wife in the audience. Those in favour? And against? There you are, Peter.
Thank you, I think.
Well, thank you all very much. So that's the re-election piece. And now we have the actual election. We have Catherine here, who will say a few words later on. Catherine was co-opted onto the board earlier this year, and she now stands for election. So she's never had an election before, so she's not being re-elected. So you now have a completely free vote, and you don't know who she is even. But she is, I shouldn't say it, it shouldn't matter, but she's actually the first lady ever to be on the board of the Lagonda Club.
Well done. Yeah.
Now, can we have votes in favour of Catherine? Now, where is Mark? Where's Mark? Now, those against, and Mark's sitting at the back. Those against, come on, Mark. No, to have a supportive husband is phenomenal, don't you think?
I'm extremely lucky. Yeah.
Anyway, Catherine, you're in.
Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Well done, and thanks very much. Now, the next thing on the agenda is reports from our various officers. Normally we kick off with a report from Robin Cook, who's an absolute, as you know, anyone who's dealt with the spares is a tower of strength for the club. Yeah. Unfortunately, Robin, for family reasons, can't be with us. Neither can Leah be here, who's his right-hand lady. So unfortunately, we have no one from the spares department here. We have a spares table, I think, in the tent, which Len is going to sort of vaguely supervise.
Am I?
Well, I think you got some bits, haven't you?
I have.
Yes. Anyway, so the spares in the tent will be sort of rather blank. If you want to help yourselves naughtily and run away, you might get away with it. Anyway, Robin is not here. I'll just say a few words. Our president has already said quite a lot about the spares, but Robin does a superb job for us. He's an absolutely lovely man. And what I would say about the spares performance is this is a small operation of part-time people, and okay, they're all paid, but they're also a part of the spirit of the club there. Yeah. And we aim, I say we aim, they aim, to turn stuff around within 24 hours, which is not bad for a small organisation, to say the least. And I've run spares organisations all over the world, so I know what it's like. And they achieve more than 95% dispatched in 24 hours from getting the order in. And for a small amateur or semi-amateur organisation, that is quite something. Our stock out, obviously, if you were running a really big spares organisation, you would aim to have what we call a first fill. That's when you go to the bin to get something. I think my target used to be 99.99%. But we achieve about 96%, which for a small organisation like that is not bad at all. So it's a huge congratulations to them all. You can clap now, even though they're not here. the main attention this year is being in sorting out the second-hand stocks, which David did refer to a bit. At the time, during the COVID period, we had to cut back on the hours of work of the spares team to save money, and the second-hand part of the spares organisation got a bit, shall we say, congested, and we moved stuff around, and we rather lost track of things. So the focus, since we came back after COVID, has been getting the second-hand spares sorted out. And they're now being put on the website. Those of you looking for parts, we're gradually working our way through the list. And the idea is that all our second-hand parts will be photographed, just like the new parts, and there for people to go and look at. Because one of the things is, I want one of these widgets, and my description of that in words may be different from your description of that in words. And just the amount of telephone time that's taken up by people asking for things and trying to explain what it is they want, and the person on the other end who's just got a phone and a description saying, have we got one of those or not, is impossible. So we're now photographing everything so you can go and look at it, which is a huge plus. And it will all be in better order, priced up on the thing with photographs within the next 12 months or so. And that's where the focus of what I call new projects is going at the moment. And we hope that will all be a benefit to all of you. Anyway, that's all I want to say about spares. Has anyone got any queries about spares? Issues, problems, naughty stuff? No? Wonderful. Thank you very much. The next reporting bit from our officers is from Tim, our racing man on the end there, who's been out and about, and the other Tim is here somewhere. Where are you, Tim? Oh, you're there. And Tim wants to say, second Tim, or you, who used to be first Tim, is now second Tim. Tim, far away.
Thank you, John. I was driving here on the 2-litre on the A40 this morning, and as I was just coming up to Oxford, there was a jogger running in the central reservation, going in the opposite direction. And he saw me and I saw him, and he sort of waved as he jogged by. And I was there shaking my head saying, well, there we go. And then a few miles later I sort of looked around me and I thought, well, here I am in a 90-year-old car with not very many brakes and no seatbelt. Maybe I'm the crazy one. Anyway, there were thankfully plenty of crazy people last year who were willing to bring their Lagondas out to race. Three particular achievements occur to me, which is the Bugler entry at the Le Mans Classic. And I was very lucky to see some footage of some pretty hairy overtaking on final laps in a sizable LG45 Le Mans replica. So that was very impressive. The long car race, which you might remember being mentioned at the AGM last year, brought out Tim and Andrew Howe-Davis's 3-litre, and Andrew was very kind to share his car with me while mine continues to be in build. And that led to a Lagonda 1-2, first and second place in the long car race, so that was fantastic. And then at Prescott, Paul Tebbett came first in a very hotly contested standard and modified class against a battery of 3098s. And they tend to turn up en masse at Prescott in August. And so for his car to come first in that class was very impressive. So the awards are there to be received and enjoyed and won. What we always need and encourage is for more people to bring their cars out to compete in. The VSCC has the Crocker Trophy this year up and running. Last year, an IT glitch meant that those competing in VSCC events, their figures weren't entered into the machine. And so Computer said no, I'm afraid. Computer still says no, according to Tanya Brown, but they are manually entering all the results of Lagonda drivers in VSCC events, so that there will be a Crocker Trophy presented at the VSCC awards dinner in the early part of next year. So good luck to all of those who have entered in VSCC competitions. There are still, of course, a few more events in the tail end of this year that are worth entering, which would attract points. One of those, which is particularly enjoyable and easygoing, is the driving test at the beginning of December at Bicester. It's an enjoyable event. For the last 2 years or 3 years, I think I've done it. It's usually a very sunny, crisp December day with a Christmassy feel in the air. It's great fun and in a good spot and good convenient place. So if there are any other people who are tempted to dip their toes in competition, you arrive and drive. You don't need any licenses or anything of that sort. It's great fun. But as I say, the competition's dinner will be in the early part of next year for the VACC, and that's when the Crocker Trophy, I hope, will be presented for the first time. So I will notify people of that through the newsletter in due course. Our own awards also need to be presented. There having been a hiatus during the COVID period, we now have a full competition season from 2021 and now closely 2022, and I hope to put together an event at which that will be presented in the absence of an April Silverstone, which was the plan this year. There are lots of Lagondans participating in privately organised events. I noticed that the Flying Scotsman rally, organised by Hero, I think it is, acronym rather than description. And there were 9 Lagondas entered in that competition. All of them, I think, from abroad. Some of whom were members, but by no means all of them. And that may well be something that owners in the club nowadays are more interested in than straightforward circuit racing. But please do let me know if that sort of thing of interest, because these companies are more than happy to produce bespoke events, competitive events, and if that's something of interest to people, then by all means that should happen. But having seen the Spanish tour in the magazine most recently, I don't think there's any lack of enthusiasm either to organise or to participate in those events, so maybe that's not so required, but do keep me posted if that's something of interest. Tim, were you wanting to say a few words?
Thank you, Tim. Sorry you brought me.
Tim, you wanted to say something anyway, didn't you?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. As I hope most of you know, but I edit your newsletter, and I hope you've enjoyed it this last year. And in particular, thank you to all those people who have contributed. I hope it's made you feel that I haven't contributed, I ought to do something. And indeed, those who haven't ought to do something. Now, I'll make this old joke again. You've got about 600 people, I only want 10 a year, so your turn will only come round once every 60 years. But I do need it. So I'm standing here with a piece of paper and a pencil, waiting for you to come and form an orderly queue to tell me that you'd like to do a newsletter this year. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, Tim has the fastest naturally aspirated 2-litre on the planet. He's owned it since 1959, and he revs it at up to 5,000 up here. Now, those of you who own 2 litres, can you imagine treating your car like that? Abusive, I call it. Anyway, Tim is a formidable competitor. And as we've just been hearing, in all these years, he's now had his first outright win ever in 60 years. Anyway, there we are. Right, any queries on competition? I always think people who compete in these lovely old cars are really quite mad. But it's wonderful that they do so. Anyway, moving right on. We now come on to the archives and history slot, and Arnold not being here, James is standing in ably for him. He's had 18 months now to get up to speed.
Gosh, well, I have to say, I had no idea I was going to be asked to speak. I was given a...
Can you just talk a bit about, not for very long, no,
there will be a few words. I think I gained an unworthy promotion. I think I'm more the assistant to the assistant.
And speak up.
Can people hear me?
Yes.
I think what I'll do is just talk a little bit about the 2 litres, this being the 2 litre highlighted car for the annual meeting this year. I was asked to produce a small booklet for this meeting, which I did. And I think for, what terms did we?
Sorry?
What terms did we agree for the book?
10 quid.
10 quid?
Yeah.
They got, I thought there was a discount for people who turned up at...
Well, that's up to you.
I think there's a small discount for people who turned up with their 2 litres.
Have you got stuff here?
So we have the book here, which I've just seen, thanks to Colin. It can, well, you'll see what it contains, but we put together, and this is more about the archives, is that obviously Arnold produced over the past 30, 40 years some magnificent books on both the Lagonda mark and also specifically on the various models. And I don't think that anybody would ever be able to compete or do better than his magnificent achievement on that. But the Lagonda Club has the most amazing archives, which has been put together by Arnold over the last 60 years. And very much with Arnold's agreement, I think it's worthwhile to bring out and to publish some of that information. So this booklet simply puts together, we think there were probably about 1,200 Lagondas produced. We have records of about 1/3 of them. About 200 members own Lagondas. Or actually put it another way, there are about 200 Lagondas which have members attached to them.
We're
some
talking
members,
about the 2 litre now.
Some members owning more than 1 2 litre. The purpose, I think, and I would like to see it done for other models too, is to have some what I would call model champions who can both promote I was going to say dissipate, but that's not quite the word I'm looking for. Encourage other members, help other members who are destroying their cars, help with the history of their cars, and generally do what they can to support all people who own the particular models. And I think we spoke a little bit about finances, and Tim mentioned that there were 9 Lagondas participating in the Flying Scotsman competition, but not all were members of the club. And I think it's part of our job, particularly as the committee, but also for all of you, to see what we can do to encourage all people who own Lagondas to be members of this club. I think in the interest of time, Chairman, that's all that I'm going to say.
Okay, well thank you very much, James. I mean, the archives of the club are one of the main problems is they're not readily accessible to members. If you go to Arnold's home in Potter's Bar, every room is piled up with Lagonda paperwork of one sort or another, going back to the dawn of time almost. And he's got the most wonderful archive of everything you can think of about it. But to access this, you have to go to his house, and he has to say, where is that, and go to one of the back room with a pile under here and find it. And one of our objectives is to gradually make that more accessible. That's something James is working on with this latest project on the 2 litre. And in the end, we'd like to get all that digitised so people can go online and look for it, which is a huge project. And we haven't got anyone volunteering yet to work on that. But the archives are a huge resource. As some of you may know, we also got, when Margaret Bentley died, we got all the Bentley archive as well, which is, the Bentley Drivers Club is incredibly jealous of that. We've got all
the V12.
All the V12 stuff that he had. And it's a very rich heritage, which is largely unknown to members, and we as a board, if we want to find something out, we can go and dig around and find it. But it would be wonderful to make that more accessible to people, and that's one of our long-term objectives. Anyway, James is a young man, so he's got plenty of time to get cracking.
Chairman, I'd just add one plea. If you haven't sent in a photograph of your car, be it a 2 litre or any other car that you own, to the club, it would be very useful if you do so. The club benefits hugely, I think, from having a photographic archive of all Lagondas that people own.
Okay. Any questions on the archives?
John, who owns the material? Is it the club or?
Well, we've set up a separate trust. We have the Lagonda, and I was very surprised we got away with it. It started off as the Lagonda Club Heritage Trust, and I thought it'd be quite fun, so we dropped the club out. So it's now the Lagonda Heritage Trust. And we wrote to Aston Martin, who actually owned the trademark, and said, did they mind us doing this? And we never got a reply, so we now think we've actually got that registered to us. Anyway, that's set up as a separate trust, so if the club was made bankrupt or something, the archives would survive, so they wouldn't get subsumed in proceedings and things, so we've done that. And actually we're looking for some more trustees for that, because various people have popped their clogs.
Yeah, volunteers, please step forward.
Yeah, please. Actually, that's a good idea. We need to find 2 more trustees for the archive. Anyone interested, come and talk to me afterwards. It's a non-onerous thing, but you are then in charge of the thing. But it is a separate trust, and it is legally bound up like that, and it's properly established. Yeah, thanks for asking. Right, Colin, report on our worldwide membership.
Right. Well, a few days ago, I was woken from a dream because the dream turned into a nightmare. This is actually quite true. I dreamt that I'd come to the AGM without the membership details. And it was so shocking that I sort of woke up from this nightmare. Anyway, it's still a bit of a nightmare because last year at this AGM, we had 803 members. The website tells me that we now have 840, which frankly I don't believe. Our database back at home shows less than that. So Valerie and Len will have to try and sort this out. It's connected in some way with this rolling membership whereby somebody joining on 25th of September doesn't have to renew until next 25th of September instead of the 1st of April. And that's rather messed up our database. So I can't give you an exact figure, but it's round about 800. So it ended up as a nightmare anyway. Anyway, changing the subject very quickly. 2 litres here today. There's a 2 litre out there which Valerie and I bought many years ago. It's now owned by our son David, who brought it today. And he was very interested when I told him that actually that 2 litre was here at Walton Hall 60 years ago. 60 years ago, 1962, Walton Hall was owned by the Ministry of Defence. And I came to a 2-week Territorial Army camp here with the 2 litre, which was our only transport. On the middle Sunday, I drove round London to Brands Hatch in Kent and took part in a sprint meeting run by the AC Owners Club and the Lagonda Club. And our competition secretary will be amazed to hear that there were 22 Lagondas there, of which 11 were 2 litres and 1680s, a couple of post-war cars. The winner of the 2 litre stroke 1680 class was Ron G, whom some of you may remember. But he was also driving his 2.6 saloon at the event, which he was quite famous for. And his time in the 1680 was a fraction better than in the saloon. But I've got the results here, which I think David and I will be interested to see, because there are many names from the past who have long since gone. But the fact that we could get all those Lagondas to a sprint meeting in Kent, which is not exactly accessible in most parts of the country, I think is a sign that times have changed. Despite the few that go out now competing, most people don't use their Lagondas for anything like the mileage that we used to all those years ago. So the answer is, I think, to get your cars out and drive them more so that you need more spares. Thank you.
Colin and Valerie do a superb job looking after our membership and keeping everybody in line and getting them to renew every year and pay their subs, which is one of the underpinnings of the club. Anyway, thank you very much, Colin. Right, next item is for Catherine, our newly elected director, who is loosely described as looking after events. Various people have talked about the objectives of the club today, and there really are three objectives, as people have referred to. The first one is to keep the cars on the road, and that's really a spares operation thing. The second one is to help members to enjoy their Lagondas, which is social side, events, etc. And the third, of course, is the archive management, which James has touched on. So, in terms of the grassroots of people enjoying their cars, Catherine is a key link on the board to achieving that. So, Catherine, introduce yourself.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I don't quite know how I got here. I only started driving my father's Lagonda 5 years ago, and that was a very rough introduction to driving a vintage car. And many crunching gear changes later, I think I've improved a bit, but I find myself on the board with absolutely no real knowledge or right to be here. But I did offer, when I first joined the club, to help the Southern Region organiser, Michael Drakeford, to run some pub meets, some events. And that baton was very rapidly left his hand and passed on to mine. So I'm now in charge of organising events for the Southern Region. And I have tried to pull together as many of our members to come to pub meets, and we've also had a visit to form halls. And really, I'm just trying to get other members to bring their cars out and meet other members with we all have the common interest of Lagondas, and we love to see the cars on the road. And other members of the public love to see the cars on the road. So all I can do is try and organise events that we all want to do. So I'm preparing a questionnaire to go out to the entire membership to find out what it is you'd actually most like to do and when you'd most like to attend, whether it be weekends or weekdays. I know that there are lots of regional coordinators who we are hugely indebted to, who have run events throughout the country to date, and I'm trying to coordinate all of those other members that we all work together to provide what the membership want. I forget how many members there are in the UK, Colin, of the 800.
It's 2/3 of about 800, whatever that figure is.
I think slightly under 600.
About 600, yes.
Let's call it 550.
Okay. And we quite often get about a dozen cars to an event. You know, today is fantastic. Look how many have come to this, which is wonderful. A real celebration of the 2 litre. But so many of you have come for the AGM. So all I will do is I'm hoping to put on an event to go to Le Mans for the Classic in 2025, which will be the 90th anniversary of when Lagonda won the Classic race, the race. So there'll be details going out in due course. And we've also got, looking ahead to 2023, the Spring Fit and Tour, which I think, Peter, you're involved in taking on this year.
I hate to say, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Oh.
We've had various problems with hotel accommodation and that sort of thing, and I'm afraid that it's not going to happen in 2023.
News to me, very sad news to me, and I'm sure to all those people who've enjoyed a fit and tour to date. But Alan Harrison has offered to put on a tour, the Nidderdale tour, 2 times 2. Don't know where you are, Alan. Can't see you. Oh, there. Sorry, behind the camera. So you were hugely oversubscribed with the first tour in June, and I understand have offered to put on another one later on in the year.
And there are still some spaces.
Great. Well, put me down for one of those, please. So really, if you're all here, if any of you would like to come and speak to me throughout the rest of the day, if you've got any ideas of things that you'd like to have put on, or any ideas, or indeed would like to set up an event that you can gain members from your region, come and talk to me and I will help. I will help to facilitate it. So I look forward to seeing many more of you in due course. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Catherine. One of the underlying thoughts in Catherine taking on this role is something I'm very keen on, and that is getting enough people to volunteer to run local, just pub meets and things, or any sort of small get-togethers. We've found through general experience that most people, apart from coming to an overnight thing, when you come away like this or you go on a tour, but for a day event, most people don't like driving more than about 30 miles, which is appalling, but that's the truth. As James Crocker famously said, we are, after all, a motoring club. However, the reality is that people don't like driving that far to go out to a pub. And this means that we need a network of members who will organise local things. We've got one or two who are very good at that, but there's large areas of the country where there isn't such a thing. And it would be very nice that, obviously, if you live in the Highlands of Scotland, that's more difficult, let alone in Orkney. And what I call thin areas of geography. But in areas where there's a reasonable number of cars, it would be very nice for every member, at least once or twice a year, to have somewhere they could go for a lunch out to meet other members, and maybe in conjunction with other clubs like the Alvises or somebody else who've also got the same problem. And it needs local people to organise that. And without the volunteers, it won't happen. People come to me and say, why doesn't the club do this? Or why don't you do that? And I say, we're not a business. We don't have employees out there doing things. Stuff is done by volunteers. How about you volunteering to do the thing you're saying, why doesn't the club do it? So the club thrives or doesn't thrive on the basis of the voluntary efforts of its members. And it's important to remember that. But if people could organise local things, a pub meet with or without tying in with another local club or something, that would be tremendous. And it's the foundation of things, it's the social relationships and meeting other people with the same interests. And Catherine's here to poke sticks at you all, and the people who are not here, to get more going at the local level. That's it. Colin.
I'd just like to say, I restarted, thanks to John's encouragement and Catherine's as well, I restarted the Suffolk dinner, which we must emphasise is first and foremost, I've been lobbied on this, first and foremost a rapier dinner with the Lagonda Club allowed to come. But one of the delights of that was that we had a number of people from the continent, including Mr. Eekhoff, who was very proud of the fact that his total driving distance from where he lives in the Netherlands was 42 miles. And so I'm inspired by everything that's been said here, and I'm inspired to run another one. We may well move it to April. Come and lobby me if you. We'll move it back to April. But the delight is the fact that being close to Harwich means that if we can set the legend that we can get some of our continental friends to come along and sup with us in Suffolk, I think that would be a very nice direction to go.
Yeah. John Boyd doing the last
Yeah, we are getting, I mean, John Boyd is reigniting the East Midlands. Where is John? Anyone who lives within 100 miles of Leicestershire.
It's almost everywhere.
Get yourself on his email list. So we are doing
next weekend.
I think it's next. Is it next Saturday?
Saturday the 1st of October.
Okay.
The
Well, that is next
very
Saturday.
charming Woodhouse Eaves Inn at Woodhouse Eaves, surprisingly.
Anyway, John has stepped up
Just north
after
of
many
the
years of Lagondering and volunteered to get things going up in that part of the world, which is wonderful. David Bracey, who used to be on the board, is trying to get something going in Kent, and we are gradually getting people to do things, but it needs more people volunteering.
But we need people to attend those, you know, to actually vote with their feet and actually come to those events.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that Jeff Leakes did a sterling job trying to organise something for the Thames Valley members, emailing 100 people who happen to live within striking distance, and only 2 or 3 ever turned up. And I have to say that we weren't able to attend the last 2 because we were away elsewhere. And if you're only getting 1 or 2 people, and he's now stopped doing it because, you know, he turns up and no one else does, well, but very few others do. It's a shame.
Anyway, that's where we are. So thank you very much, Catherine.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
if
Sorry.
I might just add that thanks to Len, I got the same email listing that Mr. Leeks has used before for our area, and it was exactly the same. I've emailed everybody, I've rang a lot of people. There seems to be very little impetus for people to join in with these things. I'm bereft of ideas as to why that might be.
John, Christopher Hancock from South Wales. The Vintage Sports Car Club pub meet in South Wales has really almost died because members do not like driving long distances in vintage cars at night. We've started something called Coffee and Cars in a local pub in the middle of South Wales, and that is attended by 20 or 30 people every month.
This is VSCC.
Well, it's open to anybody, but I mean, basically we're a group of VSCC members. But the VSCC meet, which is a night meet in a pub, is dying because nobody wants to travel, certainly in the winter. But the Coffee and Cars meet at 11 o'clock in the pub in the centre of the area on the second Wednesday is actually increasing in popularity.
Okay, well, that's good.
And most owners of vintage cars are either retired or able to travel during the day, and we find it really taking off.
No, I agree. Good local initiative is what you need. Okay, well thanks very much, Christopher. Christopher, got, I think, are you the only 1460 here today?
I don't know, I haven't looked, but probably.
Anyway,
I thought I was a sort of 2 litre, but...
No, you don't, you're a 1460. Right, thank you very much. Now we now come to any other business from it. I've got some any other business, but before I do anything, has anyone else got any other business?
I've got one small one. I had a quick conflab with our CFO, and the booklet that has been produced for the annual general meeting. If you're a 2-litre owner and you brought your car here, you get it for nothing. As a thank you for coming. If you're not a 2-litre owner, but you're here and you would like it, you get it for the hugely discounted price of £5. And for all of your fellow members who did not bother to attend the AGM today, they can pick it up for £8.
£8 is useless. No one carries change now.
Plus postage and packing.
You've got to be a tenner. Here we are, we're short of money. I could do without board members who give the club's property away. Even though you've done all... You did agree to it, John. Even though you've done all the work. Anyway, where are these booklets anyway?
I think Colin has the big box behind
you. Are they going to be in the tent?
Oh, yes.
Come to the tent and you claim your freebie.
To show evidence of ownership.
With your evidence first. Okay, thank you very much. Under my piece of the any other business, I've got one main thing to do, which is a presentation. The club has many, we've got too many pots and awards really that we run out of people to give them to, but the most important award the club gives is something called the committee plate. It's called the committee plate because it dates back to the days when the club was run by a committee, not by a board, but now we're a company rather than just a club, we're a board, but it's the most important thing we award is to people who've done an exceptional job for the club on something. We don't award it every year, only when there's a suitably meritorious person that we think we should give it to. Anyhow, we are now establishing a tradition, if you can call it that, of giving the committee plate out at the AGM every year. And I'm very pleased to say that this year we have got an award, and we're going to give it to John Fitton. As you know,
very good.
John has organised the Fitton rallies, which are not occasionally someone other than John has done it in your name, more or less, but it's been going, was it 21 years?
20 years.
20. I thought it was one more.
It was 2001 it started.
Okay.
Until 2000, 21, John.
21. These people who can't count, it's appalling, isn't it?
He's got a volunteer's treasure.
Anyway, John has done, I mean, it's been a wonderful thing, the Fit and Tours. They're always sold out within minutes of being announced almost. And Joan is his right, can I call you his right hand?
Definitely, yeah.
Anyway, Joan has done a lot of the paperwork on the books and the roads and all this sort of stuff. And famously, we went on one rally, I told this story, it's very boring, but it's in Joan's road book. We came to a T-junction, and Joan's instructions said, go straight on.
I'll never live it down, ever. Every time we ever come to a T-junction now, it's remember what John thought.
Anyway, John, can you step up here? And I've got some tinware here somewhere.
Oh, very nice.
John. This is the plate.
That's the plate.
It's got. We've run out of room to put names on now. So Martin, where is Martin? Yeah, Martin looks after our trophies, and he's having a stand made where we're going to put the new names on. So it's got to, you only get it for a year anyway, and it is hallmarked and it is solid silver. And this is not plate. This is not some cheap thing from China. This is solid silver.
This is the Lagonda Club.
No. Anyway, we trust you not to flog it or melt it, but to get it back to Martin. So you've got that for 12 months, John, and this is the committee plate.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And then we used to give you, the people who got it a mug, and I've now instituted that we give you a keeper plate that you can keep forever. Now this, I have to confess, is not solid silver, but it is quite nicely done, and this is for you to keep.
That's wonderful. Anyway, thank you very much to you and the board for awarding this. It's greatly appreciated. I mean, John and I have enjoyed doing this for 20 years. I mean, it really has been an enjoyable thing, particularly when the reception I get from the people who come on the rally. I've done it, there are a lot of them here. Every year they turn up to this. As John said, there's a clamour to get on within a few days. But it really has been a pleasure to do it. And we started in 2001 at the Thurleston Hotel in South Devon. And then this year we finished at the Summer Lodge in Dorset. And really the general manager of that hotel really pulled the stops out. She said, I will make this really special because this is your last one. And John, as John said, John's been a great help. I was going to mention about the T-junction straight up. He beat me to it. Now, I'm hoping, I've tried to encourage in the instructions this year for other people to have a go at this spring rally, usually mid-April, not to get in the way of other ones that are usually, where's Alan, in June and in September. So generally the spring rally. Unfortunately, we've been let down this year by the person who volunteered. So we're trying to revive it for 2023. We've got Martin, who's going to do something for us in 2024. So I'm hoping it will carry on. And it's really a pleasure to do it for a wonderful club.
Well done, John.
Thank you.
And Joe.
And
finally, under my AOB bit, David mentioned that I've been your chairman here for 10 years now, and I have recently informed my board colleagues that 10 years is enough. I will shortly be ending my 80th year on the planet, and I don't think having an octogenarian chairman is definitely totally desirable for the club. And moreover, a change of leadership is always a healthy thing. I think 10 years is arguably too long, and certainly it's long enough. So someone else will be standing here in my place next year. We cannot say who we haven't got one yet, but my board and I have got a few months to sort that out. But I just wanted to say that this is my final AGM that I will be chairing, and I'd like to thank you all for your support over the last 10 years. Thank you very much. Much to the relief of the lady sitting over there.
John. Next year.
Oh yes, Rodney. Yes, sorry.
Shall I go?
Yeah, you. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Last year we held our annual gathering and AGM here. It was not an unbounded success last year. They didn't have the staff, and a lot of the rooms were dirty, to be perfectly honest. And with some trepidation, we rebooked for this year. This year, I think there's been a vast improvement. They've got adequate staff. They had something like 6 people serving us last night instead of 2. I've heard no complaints about dirtiness of rooms. If there are any, please let me know. And shortly, the board has got to make a decision about whether we take up our option of having the event here next year for the same weekend. I would appreciate a straw poll, an indication from you whether you would be in favour of us returning here next year. Could I just ask for a show of hands, please? Against? Thank you, John. Thank you. Well, this is a decision for the board, which will probably be made at its last meeting, but obviously the views of those who are likely to attend will influence the board's decision. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Rodney. And that concludes the proceedings. And I'm 21 minutes late.
Right.